and welcome to Night Colors Bigfoot Radio. It's May 22nd, 2017. You're here with all of your hosts, Lauren Smith, Ricky Smith, and Lori Hood. How y'all doing tonight?
I'm doing amazing. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Oh.
Ricky is not actually with us. I think he's still putting children down, but he'll be with us shortly, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how's everything been going? Anything eventful this week?
No, not really. Nothing interesting to the listeners, I'm sure. You know, same old, same old.
Well, I get to go out researching tomorrow.
Oh,
this time I'm hitting Davy Crockett National Forest. That's where I'm going this time. And I'm real excited because I have never researched this particular area, so it's like new to me. And we're going in the middle of the week. That way, there's a lot less people out there, and we'll see what happens. So I'm gonna take my recorder and bionic ear, and we're going to see what we can capture. And I'm excited. Awesome. I'm really excited. I haven't been getting to go very much because my research partner works on weekends. So the only way I can do this is take some vacation and go. So, I mean, that's it, you know. Not good to go by yourself. It really isn't. And I don't like carrying weapons. Not really. So, anyway, I'm just really extremely excited. I'm already packed. I have everything by the door. You know, tent, all works, you know, all by the door. So I'm very excited.
That's awesome. Well, y'all be safe, and hopefully you got something good to report back with.
Yeah, if I get anything good, I'll play it on next week's show. Speaking of that, next week's show is our last show of the season, everybody. We'll be gone for June and July and about half of August, and then we'll be coming back about the middle of August, but we always take a summer hiatus. It kind of gives us a break, gives us a chance gives me a chance to do some research out there. And it's kind of hard to run a show and work and all that. And you know, and research too. So it kind of gives me a chance to do that and gives us a break. But during the summer, we're going to be running some of our older shows. We've got some really good shows in our archives that have just their lost gems, and so we're going to be bringing a lot of those up. Some live in the field shows, some of our more prominent guests from the past and stuff like David Pilates, Autumn Williams, and ones like that. So we'll be playing those over the summer. So. If you want to catch us and you're needing your Night Callers Bigfoot Radio fix, go to our YouTube channel, Night Callers Bigfoot Radio on YouTube. And you know, I'll put up a new one every week at the same time I do now. So anyway, if Lauren, is there anything you want to catch us up on? Or?
No, not really. Y'all keep checking our Facebook page over the break. We'll we'll post the shows there as well. Also, if we come up with any more merchandise to sell, it'll be there. So if you guys want to represent Night Callers in your hometown, just message us and we'll get a sticker out to you. They're $5, 5 inches in diameter, and the proceeds go back into the show and into better and bigger merchandise. And we're planning an outing in the fall, I believe. And so the proceeds will also go to that. So y'all get at us.
On this outing, it's a meet and greet outing, and we're going to be holding it probably in late October down here in East Texas. So you people that want to go Bigfooting, it's absolutely free. You just pay for your campground, and everyone's invited. It's not we're just inviting anybody that wants to come, and we'll just stay tuned, and we'll give you more details on that as we know the location and everything. Okay, so I guess I'll go ahead and read the bio, because this guest, I just want to tell y'all, Steve Kulls is the Squatch detective, and he has a marvelous, very informative website. If you go to squatchdetective.com, just type that in, it'll take you directly to this website. It tells you just about everything that you want to know about Steve and what he's been doing, and it's just, I feel very informed at the moment. But I do, but I still want everyone out there to listen to the show, because I'm sure that there are things he's going to tell us that are not on his website. But that is squatchdetective.com if you want to go there while you're listening to the show. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit what we have about Steve. Steve Kulls is a professional investigator and has had a lifelong fascination with the Bigfoot phenomenon since an early age. In 1998, after reading Monsters of the North,
Hello?
Uh-oh.
Okay, glad that wasn't just me. Okay, yeah, she dropped out. I thought that was just me. I was like, well, good time for my
I have a problem.
Okay. See, we were talking about Blog Talk having issues.
See? Jinxed it.
Actually, it's not Blog Talk. It's this living way out in the woods like I do. Apparently, the cell phone tower walks around out there. I'll be fine, and then it just, But anyway, Steve firmly believes in the boots-on-the-ground methodology of obtaining evidence for or against evidence regarding the Sasquatch mystery. Steve has appeared on numerous local news programs around the country and national venues such as Fox and Friends, and has interviewed in print over 100 newspapers over the last 10 years. Wow. Steve has appeared on the History Channel, the National Geographic Channel, and Destination America, featured on several programs, and has authored 2 books. Steve is a former licensed private investigator in New York and a retail investigator of 19 years. Now, he used to have a show, Sasquatch Detective, on Blog Talk Radio back when Night Callers first began. He was already a veteran radio show host. And I thought, wow, he has just fell off the face of the earth. Well, see, that's what I didn't know, because Steve is not dead or gone or anything else. He has been very busy, and we're going to bring him on right now. And Steve, how are you doing tonight?
I am doing wonderful. How y'all doing?
Just fine. I think I'm going to let Lauren interview you first, and then I will jump in. How about that? Would that be fine with you?
Who's got the tougher questions?
Probably me.
Yeah.
All right, we'll hold off for you then.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Take it away.
She's relentless.
Well, no, I'm not.
Yes, you are. That's okay.
That was just an example of being relentless.
Exactly. She's my mother, so I am the authority on how relentless she can be. Okay. So my standard question, or the standard question of the show is, it says that, after reading Monsters in the Northwoods, that's when you got into this. So what happened? You read the book, and where did you go from there?
Well, I went to where every red-blooded American goes to, the Internet. And it was relatively a new medium back in 98. I mean, it had only been around since 95, really, when it started to sprawl a little bit. and started reaching out. And, of course, back then there were some message boards and Yahoo groups. Mm-hmm. And then eventually, I got my bearings on truthfully, I thought this whole thing was going to be something that was going to be unprovable. Although I had that fascination when I was very young, and I can thank my dad for doing that. He turned on something rather new on cable back in, I must have been 1974, 75, and turned on a program with a little box called HBO, and they had on HBO The Legend of Boggy Creek. And, of course, being a young person, maybe 5 or 6 times seeing that, really definitely left me with an interest of, wow, scared but interested. But then as I became a teen, I thought of more important things like cars and girls, and kind of let that go up until 1998, when I had long forgotten about The Legend of Boggy Creek or any of the In Search of episodes or any of that. And I picked up the book Monsters in the Northwoods and realized that, hey, these things are in my backyard practically. So I reached out to a bunch of researchers, and a couple of them, one of them I'm still a very good friend, Eric Waltman, from formerly of the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society, now runs the Pennsylvania Cryptozoological Society. And Hawk Spearman was another one who, the late Hawk Spearman, God rest his soul.
Yes, God rest his soul.
And, those were really the two I talked to a lot in the early days. And then from there were a few people I talked to, but they fell off over the years. And by 2003, I had my own little grassroots organization here in New York State called the Adirondack Research Organization, where I was focusing mainly on sightings around the Adirondacks, Whitehall, New York, etc. And it was kind of funny because I had our first little mini meeting where, and we all got to the restaurant, and there was some guy that showed up from Michigan. I was like, what? But then from there, one of the local media outlets picked up on me, and actually Paul Bartholomew, one of the authors of Monsters of the Northwoods, to do a little Bigfoot special in the morning. And, then through that I met Bill Brand, another author of Monsters in the Northwoods, who for many years was my mentor. And, in 2006 I kind of went national with SquatchDetective.com. And, the rest is history. But I really thought that I was going to come into this feeling that this mystery was a bunch of hoax. And then after talking to witnesses and being a trained forensic interviewer, I really had a different take on it. It was like, wow, this is not baloney. And, so that's how it all began.
So when you were interviewing these people, you really weren't a believer.
I was on guard. I mean, I will admit, and I would have loved to. You were skeptical? I was skeptical. I would love to have believed, but for me, it was like, let me get down to the interviews, and I met the police officer that had the sighting in '76 in Whitehall. I interviewed a guy, I remember in 2003, that had a sighting, and he was a former Marine from Vietnam and a truck driver by day, and lived and an outdoorsman, and lived in that property for 15 years. And to watch his physiological reaction, he'd seen something. You can't just make goosebumps appear on your arms and your jugular veins distend. As I watch this as I talk to people. You watch them almost relive this. And I've always said this, that a Sasquatch sighting to somebody that's not out there doing research is probably twice the trauma it is for a researcher who has their first sight.
Right, because they have some knowledge.
Yeah. The average Joe, you just took their belief systems and turned it on end.
Right.
So really, when you watch them relive this, when you tell that.
So how do you feel about it now? That's the question I need to ask, because you're still not a skeptic, I don't think, after all this time. Certainly it turned around some point.
Well, I would hope not. I've had a handful of sightings myself now over the years.
Well, can you tell us about your first one? I'm interested to hear that.
Well, my first couple of them were not really that exciting to me now. I had a much better sighting years later, but the first couple of times, and the very first time was in East Texas.
Wow.
2006, in an area in East Texas I'm sure you're familiar with, but I don't know. Well, it was near Pat May's Lake.
Would you be able to tell me the county that it was in by any chance? Would that be given away from that?
It was right near Pat May's Lake.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And I seen this thing pop up its head over. I was wearing night vision, and I watched this thing pop its head over these 6-foot reeds, and it ducked back down. And I was looking at a researcher who was making his way through the area. And it did it a couple of times, and then it just took off. The second encounter I had, again, was through night vision. And that the first time was just head and shoulders. Could just make out the silhouette of it. But the second time, again, we caught it crossing a cow pasture in Alabama. Just a fleeting 3-second, there it was, into the woods it walked, and that was it. Saw it head to toe, but it was off in the distance a bit, but really no detail. Fast forward to 2011, in my own research area, I had a 45-second encounter with one that was about 150 feet away from me, where I spotted it with a flashlight, and I could see the eyes reflecting back at me, and it was blinking at me, and then it just, when I jiggled the flashlight, it just turned and walked into the wood line around the southwest end of our base camp. And our base camp started radioing, hey, we heard this thing moving around there, and we found the stuff where it walked in. In 2012, I actually was doing a shoot for Nat Geo Paranatural, which eventually got repackaged and became Monsters and Mysteries Unsolved on Destination America. And the very first night we got there, we had come off the Chautauqua Lake, New York Bigfoot Expo. We had driven, and it's 5 hours from there so we'd been on the road for about 8.5 hours. Nat Geo came in, they did a few quick interviews, and then they left because they knew we were tired. And it was pouring rain. It was just miserable. Full moon that night, but it was overcast, so the whole canopy kind of had like this night-light glow. It wasn't spectacular or spotlightish. It was just kind of like a night-light glow. So it was about 1:30 in the morning when nature called and I had to go use a tree. And I opened up my tent, stepped out, and I looked to my left up towards where the vehicles were parked, because it was the dirt road is probably maybe 40 feet from the camp to the road, not a very great distance. And I looked over to the left, and scooting along running adjacent to the trail from from south to north, was this 5-foot, 5.5-foot creature. I really couldn't tell, but it wasn't very tall, and I felt like I was tall, long brown hair, and my whole reaction to it was, nah, couldn't be. It just couldn't be.
It's too small.
I was half asleep, and I was like, what the heck? Went and I used the tree, came back in the tent. About 2 hours later, I get up to use the tree again, and I step out of the tent, but that time I brought a flashlight. Didn't see nothing. But the next morning we found a log had been placed, a birch log, and we were collecting a lot of birch because of the rain. And a lot of people who are not familiar with birch. It's a white tree that grows very very abundantly in New York State. And it contains a lot of oils in it. So even if it gets wet, once it dries out in the fire, it goes up like gasoline. So, we were collecting a lot of birch. And the next morning, after my sighting, something had placed a birch log behind one of the guy's Jeeps. And before he had gone to bed, he went out to his Jeep to get his pillow and blanket because he didn't want to take anything, in case his tent leaked. He didn't want a wet pillow and blanket. So he brought it into his tent last minute. Had it been there at that time, he wouldn't have been able to open up the back of his Jeep. So that morning when he went to put his pillow and blanket back in there, he's like, "Hey guys," and here's this rock. And I was like, "Well, I got a funny story to tell you." And then the next day we actually found a track that was running adjacent from the trail that was about 9 inches long by about 4.5 inches wide. So very wide foot. That's why they call him Bigfoot, not because of the length necessarily, it's because of the width. And, very flat-footed creature. And, a lot of things I tell people is, people see prints. Does it have an arch? Yes, it's not Bigfoot. Bigfoots do not have arch. So, we find. So
can you recall the exact time that you actually converted over to a believer from a skeptic? Or was it a gradual process?
It was a gradual process. I always had the reservation. I guess when I had seen my first one down in Texas, I probably would have said, yeah, that was probably the moment which converted me from a skeptic. At that point, after talking to people, I was a skeptical believer and had reservation. I was like 97% sure that they existed at that point in time, given, the records, the dermal ridge evidence by Jimmy Chilcutt, some of Dr. Meldrum's stuff, knowing the herniation on the Patterson-Gimlin film, reading trance, doing a lot of that background. And by that time, by 2006, the end of 2006, I was a firm believer.
Well, going to your website, I noticed that you had and I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. We'll discuss it briefly, and unless you want to go into length, but I noticed that you had a hoaxers section, and I really like because there are a lot of people now at the Hall of Shame, is what he calls it. A lot of people now, we have so many new people in the Bigfoot community that don't know about Rick Dyer, don't know who Tom Biscardi is. They don't know any of these hoaxers. But what really surprised me, and I thought I knew everything about it, and I'm trying to pull it up right now, was how many times Rick Dyer has tried to deceive the public.
Oh, yeah.
I was absolutely amazed. I'll go ahead and run down the list. In 2008, there was the Georgia body hoax. That was the one that was in the freezer, right?
That is correct.
Okay. I remember that Bigfoot Friday. I remember it shut the internet down in places. I was so upset that day. So upset. And that was before I even knew it was a hoax. Just the idea that there was a Bigfoot in a freezer just traumatized me because I'm just pro-life Bigfoot. I am anyway. And so then in 2009, it was I have a body again. A new body.
Exactly. Yeah.
In 2010, Men in Black took my Bigfoot body hoax, In 2011, I'm going to Canada to kill one hoax. And 2012 was a tent video hoax. Now, I remember that one. And then in 2013, yet another body. And this is the one he toted around the country, right?
Well, he kind of tied that one into the Morgan Matthews. That was the one in the tent you saw in the tent. Kind of tied that all rolled into one. And then he tried to claim that he had gotten a baby, too, and, a live one. And it was just all kinds of ridiculousness going on at the point. And, of course, he was feeding on this new crop of what I call the Facebook Bigfooters, the ones who came in to Bigfoot because of Facebook. We had this, we used to go, and it's amazing how the Internet has progressed over the years. And I look at it
really is
analytical. I mean, like I said, when we first started, we were talking on message groups and Yahoo groups. Then
I remember those days.
then from about 2001 till about 2008, it was forums. Everything was forums. We had the Bigfoot forums and this forum and that forum.
GCGRO forum, which is still up.
Yeah, and some of them are still up. And some of them still function very well. But then after that, it became Facebook and Facebook groups. So that's the new trend is the Facebook groups. And then you even have now an offshoot of that, the YouTube groups, or the YouTube channel Bigfoot. So you have all these little things, and it's very hard to parse what's crap and what's not.
That's true.
You know,
and you know, with the new people coming in, they don't know the history.
Nope.
And we, as a community, you know, the ones that have been in the community for a while, they remember. But they don't go around talking about it. They don't go around bringing it up. And, you know, it's over, it's done, it's in the past. We know what they did, and that's it. But maybe we should be reminding people, especially with this guy.
Well, not only Rick Dyer, but the one that keeps coming around like a boomerang now is Todd Standing. A lot of people don't remember Todd Standing. When he first came about in 2005, he had created a website called Sylvanic.com, and Sylvanic was supposed to be this Native American word up in Canada. And, you know, to get to the Sylvanic Valley, you had to crawl through this hole that was only like 3 foot wide, and then you entered in there. And then there was the missing hikers that went missing in there, and he had little sketches of these people. Looked like a second grader wrote the sketches. And then there was Sylvanic Video number 1, which supposedly was this lost film footage that was found. And you hear this, you just see this camera shooting down on what appears to be footprints that really aren't very definitive. And you hear this woman going, "Oh, what do we have here?"
I remember that video.
Right? And then all of a sudden the tree started shaking, snow, and you're just, and then the video cut out. So now here's the interesting correlation. It was very well known. Todd Standing had a production company called Outstanding Production. He shot a bunch of commercials, some of them for strip clubs, believe it or not. And he had put an ad out. Looking for actors prior to this video coming out. The end result is that Sylvanic is not a Native American name familiar to any of the Native Americans out there.
Oh. Well, that's nice to know.
Yeah, and the fact is his mother's name is Sylvia. So it is a play off his mom's name. You know, and, you know, there was a lot of, you know, people were saying a lot about, and there was a big misconception, even I had fallen for that misconception that, a lot of people think that the person in the video was Louise Standing. Well, a lot of people claim it was sister. It's actually his wife was Louise Standing. But needless to say, people forget the history of things like that, and they fall by the wayside. And then when, he comes out with, I think in 2010 he came out with Puppet Face, what we call Puppet Face, and it looks like somebody's wearing a hood almost with these big, totally, it looks hokey and phony. And then he came out with Blinky, what I call Blinky. But a year earlier he had come out with a still shot of it, so which he gave to the Calgary Sun, which they put it up raw image, and then I grabbed it, and then I was able to tear it apart very well. That that's funny. The camera settings were set for an indoor model shot where something wasn't going to move. It was the angle of the field of view of the camera was angled down, which if you're expecting to be shooting wildlife, you would expect the camera setting to be at high speed, made to optimize as much light as it could, and not to be zoomed in, and otherwise you're going to get blur. And what you have there is a picture that's perfectly in focus, with the exception of things. But what's really wrong with that picture was that there was 2 layers of focus to it. There was an item right in front that was in focus, then there was some blurriness, and then the creature which was in focus, and then and from that point I can say this is a Photoshop. It has to be Photoshopped. How can it be focused in 2 separate areas? The camera that he shot it with does not have the ability, and we know the camera he shot it with because it's still on the metadata of the film. And then we ran it through an error level analysis test, and it showed that the picture had been layered, that an element of the branches in front of the face had been layered in. So, without a doubt, that picture is a hoax.
But he continues to keep popping up, even though he has been, everyone from my school knows that he's not genuine. But I guess he's just appealing to new audiences.
Probably. That would explain why he disappears and why he comes back.
Exactly. And that's what they do. They disappear, they crawl off with their tail between their legs, and then they slip back in just like a fox in the chicken house. And well, what about Tom Biscardi? I mean, I haven't heard anything from him since the Rick Dyer thing. Has he made any reappearances?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, right now he's offering a $1 million bounty on a Bigfoot.
Oh, Jesus.
No.
It's underwritten. It's underwritten by some company that actually enforces all the rules, and he's been bouncing around a bit. He was in the Morgan Matthews film too, shooting Sasquatch, or shooting Sasquatch, and
what really surprised me though was I always thought he was duped by Rick Dyer, which surprised me because I thought he was more intelligent than that. And I thought he knew what he was looking at, and he would know the difference, and that's what surprised me. But then, according to your investigation, he wasn't duped. He was in on it. Is that correct?
My first book I wrote was 50 Large, which was the 50 Large, the real story of the Georgia Bigfoot body hoax. Now, that was my first book I wrote. And in that, it's very clear in a timeline. And here's the funny thing. I actually caught a period of time where Rick Dyer was pretty pissed off at Biscardi, pardon my French.
Fine.
And I ended up meeting with Rick Dyer. Never met him before. Mind you, yes, I went out to Indiana. I was the one who dug that foot out of the ice and said, no, this is a hoax. But there was so much going on behind. And there was so much going on behind the scenes, it was unbelievable. But when I went
because I remember people were trying to they wanted to hear from you. They wanted to hear from you. They didn't want to hear from Tom. They didn't want to hear from Rick. They wanted to hear from you because they knew they could get the truth from you. I remember all of this. This is very,
And the funny thing is one of the pivotal points was there was a point where Biscardi had actually wanted me to sign an NDA and wanted all the people that were there to sign an NDA and just say that, hey, we'll just say we'll all sign NDAs and agree not to discuss it ever again, and we'll just say the guys took their Bigfoot body and the pressure was too much and they left with it. And my instinct was, no, I'm not going to do that. Because
knew you wouldn't.
That's covering a hoax up with another hoax. Won't do it. Sorry.
Exactly.
This needs to be exposed. This needs to be, whatever. And there was a good reason for that. The reason why he wanted the NDA signed was because he was having the same film crew that filmed the alien autopsy video to come in and film a Bigfoot autopsy video. So that never happened. I crushed it by just insisting on the truth. And Tom was never really the same after I refused to sign an NDA. And, we went around the room, and to be fair, a couple of researchers were not there. They were out with J.C. Johnson and Leonard Dan were not there. They were out with, I'm trying to think of his name, But anyway, they were out with the guy who fronted the money and getting food, getting dinner for us. And that's when, Tom dropped the bomb. And, of course, he had his stoolies right there, all searching for Bigfoot people saying, oh, yeah. Well, I may not have to agree with it, Tom. I remember Java Bob Smallsback saying, oh, I don't have to agree with it, Tom, but you're the boss. And, and myself, I was like, nope. And I went out there. I stormed out of the garage that we were in. That's where everything was happening. And I walked around the back, and there was a folding chair there, and I picked up the folding chair, and I launched it. I was so irate at that point in time.
I bet.
Oh, my God. But notwithstanding, when I met Dyer in February of 2009, he had realized that the party was playing Dyer and Witten off against me and vice versa the whole entire time. And Dyer had taken me to the store where he bought the freezer. And the freezer he bought was right there. It was a 124 cubic foot freezer, or from what I can recall off my coconut here. And it would have taken a few days for that to freeze over. The thing is Biscardi flew in the very next day. With less than 24 hours later, he was in front of that freezer. That's when they got all the little pictures in front of the freezer there, and the freezer door was open. So there was no way in hell that thing could have been frozen over, as he claims, for him to not be able to see it.
Yeah.
So that was the physical evidence right there to prove that, listen, there's just no way you could have seen that frozen. That was just one piece of it. The cover-up was another big piece of it. The actual plan of it was the only one ever to really show remorse in the whole thing was by Matt Witten, the police officer that had lost his job over this. And I had talked to, I think, Matt Witten in 2011, and he said, he goes, I never really thought, I thought everybody was going to go, ha-ha, it was going to be funny, but people were pissed, and, I hurt a lot of people. I realized that I hurt a lot of people, and I feel bad about that. And I said, well, what was the biggest mistake? He goes, the biggest mistake was Biscardi letting you there because you blew the cover off the whole thing. And it was kind of funny, but Witten, also corroborated Dyer's story. So at the point where Witten was actually being remorseful and said, no, he's being truthful. What about Rick and all his new games? Well, that's just Rick being Rick. He likes, he likes getting people mad. He likes people being mad at him. It's his thing.
Oh.
So
he's good at it. Yeah. He's real good at getting people mad. I think that the maddest we got was the very first time. And now everything he comes up with, if his name's attached to it, once a liar, always a liar. He could have an authentic Bigfoot, carry him into the room, and set him down. And I would not believe it was real because he is such a liar. That's the way I feel. Just saying.
But, it was a very interesting time.
Yeah. So after this, you still had Squatch Detective for a few years, and then you decided to let the show go because you got involved in these television programs and
that's not why I actually. The problem is that we had outgrown Blog Talk Radio, and we had gotten offers to go to a couple other radio stations. And the problem with the radio stations is they were operating on software that was very difficult. We had another station that folded. We had another, so it was just a bad set of circumstances why we're not on. And we were actually going to bring the show back this spring. Unfortunately, my co-host Chris Bennett had suffered a heart attack, and he had to have heart surgery. So he is convalescing. He is doing wonderful.
I'm glad to hear he is.
Yeah. He called me up and says, well, and he's like, Steve, I got to tell you, I'm in the hospital. Now, don't get scared. You just fill me in on everything. I'm going to be okay, buddy. And that's just, that's Chris. I love the guy, to death. And so, obviously we'll wait till the fall because, we're busy doing our thing. And, doing shows was always a passion. We just needed a good stable venue, and we brought it back a couple of times, and we aired for, 3 solid months. I want to say, was it last year? It was last year, I think. We aired for 3 solid months, and then kablooey, all of a sudden the software that we were using for the station wasn't working properly, and they were giving the station owner a runaround. And he says, all right, I'm going to go switch to a different platform. We're going to put the station on hiatus for a couple of months and get this done right. And then after 4 months, we got a message just saying, hey, I've thought about this, and this is not really what I want to do. Oh. Okay. So that was that. But we will be bringing the show back at some point.
Do you think you'll be using Blog Talk?
You never know. You never know.
That would be awesome. I'm just saying, you guys, keep your eye out. You'll be sure to let us know on your website, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Blog Talk Radio was always the most stable. Believe it or not, was always the most stable environment we had. It was always the most reliable environment. And there were days when things fall through, but they were few and far between compared to what we were dealing with other stations. I mean, we did half a show on one station, and we weren't even alive. It was being recorded, but it wasn't being broadcast. So, and then the other thing you lose to is that ability to take in callers, and that's why I really think Blog Talk was the most fun medium, because we had the chat room, we had the ability to take calls, and every once in a while we get a phone call that would either elicit my quick wit and tongue, or elicit a great laugh.
Well, tell us what you've been up to recently in the last year.
Well, I'll tell you what, the last year we have been, we actually been doing a lot of research in Vermont, and had some, 2013 we had some in the last few years, 2013 we had some relative success with seeing something on our FLIR walking along the bank of the Pulteney River, which is a very heavily sightinged area. 2014 was kind of a slow year at the end of 2013, 2014, because unfortunately I had suffered a couple of really great losses in my life. One of my most fondest cheerleaders and my brother, one of my brothers, passed away unexpectedly. And
I'm sorry.
And thank you, I appreciate it. And then 5 months later, my mother passed away due to an accident. So it was a double shot. So 2014 was kind of a quiet year. Didn't really to lose my mother and my brother in 5 months, and I lost my father many years ago. It really was a hit, because I had lost a lot of I lost my immediate family that was close by me, and so it was quite the hit. But 2015 we started turning things around, picking myself up, dusting myself off, started doing a lot of shows. I can't name how many shows I've been to now. Spreading what I call spreading the gospel of what Sasquatch I believe is, and how to kind of rein in our wild imaginations, and let's let a little bit of good investigation and science, and good theory kind of rattle around the coconut, instead of it jumping into a time warp or something crazy like that. And then finally, we started getting out to our areas. This year we went back just this past weekend we went back to our primary research area after giving it a rest for a few years there. And I got to say, I came home. When did I get home? Early Sunday morning. No, Saturday night, late Saturday night. Probably pulled in about 11 o'clock. And thinking, well, it really wasn't that eventful. But silly me, I mean, we had a daytime sighting. There was 4 researchers. The 3 of the 4 of us saw this thing watching us off in the distance in the daytime, which was amazing.
That's always good. Yeah, that's always good to have witnesses. You know,
we had found a track. We had gotten the vocalization that we caught on recording, and we had, unfortunately we weren't recording at the time, but we were all getting ready to pack it in, and then we heard a series of 5 rapid succession tree knocks that were unprovoked. We weren't doing nothing except just getting ready to go to bed, and it had been hours, since we did any call blasting, and all of a sudden, yeah, bang, 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 bang. And it was just wood on wood, and it's coming from the deepest part of the woods, which is where we had our sighting the next day when we decided to bushwhack a little bit. And so it actually turned out to be quite an eventful weekend, just very spread out. A little thing here, a little thing here, a little thing here, a little thing here. And, so I can't say it was an unsuccessful weekend. And,
right.
We have a very, and of course, I don't really give out too many dates or anything like that or where we're going, because
that's why, because
operational security. It's all about operational security and what I call crime scene containment. And so, but we are going out to.
Great. I like that.
We are going out to several locations, several expeditions planned or ready for this year, stretching from now through September, and we'll be covering probably 3 states. So it's a vast part of New York. So it's amazing. My field team, I have built the field team up, and the funny thing is that I think right now, maybe 40% of the field team is either former law enforcement or current law enforcement.
Oh,
so it's kind of funny how that's all working out. But got a great bunch of people, men and women alike, that are level-headed, great-minded, skeptical, and that's how you have to go into every Bigfoot investigation. Is you got to think like a skeptic. You got to look for those answers, what it could be, before you can go to the remarkable assumption that it's a Sasquatch. And, that's why, I see a lot of audible reports or audio reports and wood knocks and tree structures. It's kind of funny because for a while we were doing Cabela's every year, and last year at Cabela's in 2016, I did a whole dissertation on tree bends and tree structures, how a lot of them that people have pointed out that says this has got to be a Sasquatch actually was very clearly to me was ice damage. And or a Native American, because people think that, Sasquatch, bent that tree over. Well, unfortunately, a tree just doesn't bend and stay there. If you have a twist and a break, different story. But if you have a tree bend, that takes weeks. So you tell me a Sasquatch stood there for weeks and held that tree like that till it started to grow that way? You see, that's where we have some of the problems with that. Now, if the tree is notched into something else, then you have to look at it from the aspect of, maybe the tree had ice damage, it bent into that, and then when it started to come back up, it got caught by the other trees that had been damaged by the ice storm, and now it just started to grow that way. So you can never be too sure. But have I seen things that are definitely very weird? Yes, I've seen trees that are upended, that the roots are up in the sky and have been placed. I have seen, woven things that were, trees intertwined and woven that were not natural. Are they Sasquatch? hard to say because nobody ever sees them do that. So, a lot of reports that come in now are, well, I heard this tree knock, or I heard these series of tree knock, or I have something screaming, and that's that's a direct correlation to finding Bigfoot, which has its pros and its cons. And I think, a lot of people may take me to task on this, but I think the pros are a lot better than the cons. No matter how many cons you look at, well, people think tree knocking and just whooping is research, or, everybody thinks. But the big pro of the whole thing, and I think it circumvents everything, is it's, number one, it's created awareness to the mystery, and two, it's made the word Bigfoot. It's made the word Bigfoot not a 4-letter word, and that is the hugest thing. And if there's a program that can do that, then power to them. And I agree wholeheartedly that, at least it's you got to understand. People got to understand it's made for entertainment too. So I've been at a couple of their tapings, and I know they're trying to do real research. But when it hits the cutting room floor, a lot of the real research gets cut out of the picture. So.
And that's the same thing that happened to Autumn Williams on the serious.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely.
Serious subject, and she got so fed up with it, and I can understand that when she explained why. But she wasn't at liberty to really go into a lot of detail, and I think that they have to sign some kind of non-disclosure or something. I'm sure, but it's probably part of their contract. When you go out, you mentioned that you call blast, and I was just curious, what do you call blast? What kind of recordings do you use? The Sierra sounds, or
I use some of the Sierra sounds. The one that I love to use is the tree knocking and whooping, the whooping one, and that was actually the one that elicited the response. I do use a few other, the Sonoma whistles, the Polyap screamer, the Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania moaner, and I use some baby crying and baby whining, human baby crying and human baby whining.
And do you have good results with those?
I've gotten some stuff with the baby whines, but nothing that I can point my finger on and say that's a Sasquatch. However,
have you ever tried to do a call yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. and I think that...
Steve, I never would have pictured you doing a call. I'm quite impressed by that, actually.
Heck yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah. But now, why do I have to do a call when I got a recording that can do it a lot louder than I can?
Oh, yeah.
So, and I can, all I have to do is just push a button. But truthfully, the only response I ever got, I thought that may have been from a Sasquatch, legitimately, was just this past weekend, and it was off the whooping and knocking Sierra Sounds one. And we got this really weird scream back, not like a shriek, but just like hard to explain. But, again, this is an area that I have been going to for the last 17 years. So I'm very familiar with every animal sound that's in there. Owls, birds, foxes, deer, bear, and bobcat. And it was none of those. It was one of those that, what the hell? And we actually heard it a couple of times. And after the first time, I said, let me get my recorder out. And I just grabbed my low-end one, and I just sat it down next to the call blaster and, hit record. And within 5 minutes, it responded back again to our whooping and call.
Huh.
So I had to amplify it a little bit, because it was a distance away. It was actually to the north.
Are you more of a? Are you? I'm just full of questions here. Are you more of a? You bring them into you, or are you the kind of in your team that goes out looking for them? They actually roams through the woods at night, or do you do a little of both? How do you? What's your preferred mode of research?
Our main plan is to bring them to us.
Right.
Autumn Williams is really great at saying, you have to let them feel like they're in control. you know. So that's what we do. We use a little subterfuge, set our technology snares, you know, trail cameras, recorders, and let primates are naturally curious. You know, if you hear something fall, I mean, you're sitting at home and you hear boom, what's the first thing you do? You get up and you look out the window, see what the heck that was. That's a primate thing. Mm-hmm. However, bears and all the other bad animals in the woods will skedaddle. And that's why stealth mode is horrible a lot of times. You go in stealth mode, and a bear may not hear you, or a deer may not hear you, or whatever. The bad animals may not hear you if you're in stealth mode. But a Sasquatch will know because of their, obviously, they have, you know, excellent night vision. The reflection in an eye would indicate to me that they have a tapetum, which is the mechanism that gives them kind of a night vision that cats have and deer have and dogs have and 12 other species of primate have, by the way. And I think you're going to keep them away because now they're going to be suspicious.
Do you think they can see infrared?
No, absolutely not. No mammal, no primate can see in the infrared spectrum. Or see like infrared, or see where. How should I? Let me reword that. They can't see, you know, infrared light like a beam. Actually, William Janginis had a really great idea that perhaps their hearing, and I agree that their hearing is probably one of their greater assets as well. Their hearing, they may hear the electronic mechanism, almost like remember the old VCRs or even a DVD player, you can hear that little whine sometimes. It's like an electrical, it's in the background almost. Yeah. Well, I think they can pick up on that. That may be one particular theory. I don't know if I buy that yet because of the Vermont trail cam photo. I don't necessarily buy that, but that is one theory. But I don't think they can see in any differently than any other primate would. You know, that would be.
Well, I've always wondered if they're not in there watching you put up the trail cam.
Oh, absolutely. And what taught me that was, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
What taught me that was the whole birch log. You know, I never was really big in gifting or anything like that, or any of that stuff. But you know, here we are collecting birch, and there just happens to be a birch log behind the tree, behind one of the vehicles the next day. That's kind of weird. And Ron Moorhead talked about that too when he was in the High Sierras. How one year they came in and their hunting lodge had a hole in the roof, so they were collecting all kinds of fir trees and pine branches to cover that up. And the next morning they got up and there was a pile, within some feet of their camp that wasn't there the day previously. So he believed that they had probably saw them gathering those pine leaves or pine branches and kind of helped them. So that was the first correlation I've ever had of that kind. So, yeah, I do believe that, if you're out there going close to where they live and you're putting up trail cameras, we're going to know it.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Rick.
I do believe that. And the room goes silent.
Well,
I think he's muted. There we go.
Oh. Go ahead, Rick.
Oh, nice. I'm sitting in the garage talking to myself. Appreciate it. So, I said, do you ever go in with body cam? Do you have a camera on yourself at any time?
I tried a body camera once. I have not. May not be a bad idea. I'm exploring that technology for future missions. But, with the sudden increase in the price of the GoPros, I remember GoPros when they first came out, they were like $70, $80. Now they're like $300, and they're not even into it.
Man.
So we're looking at that technology going forward. But like every other Bigfoot researcher, I work for a living and I have to earn my paycheck. So I can't.
Amen.
A lot of people ask me too, is because I've done TV. they automatically assume I get paid for that stuff. And truthfully, the only paid television show I ever got paid for was when I went to Loch Ness for The Truth Behind the Loch Ness Monster. And I did that show in 2011, and they did pay me to do that. Of course, they had to fly me to Scotland for 9 days, so they had to make it worth my while. But other than that, and it certainly wasn't anything to retire on. But
I don't have as much. I don't have a whole lot of time in the field footing, say, but I do have a lot of time camping and just hiking and romping around the woods. And I've always thought, why put a camera on the front of you? Because you've already got your eyes. You're gonna pick up on more peripheral vision. Why not put it on the back?
Put a camera behind you. Yep.
Yeah, what if
That's
you're walking and this dude decides to peek around a log to look at you walking by like, what is that guy doing in my house?
Mm-hmm.
That's,
not to mention I can watch the rest of my field team flipping me off. They're saying, I got to go up that hill.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is an excellent idea. In fact, that over the weekend, that idea got floated to me too by one of my team guys. They're like, if you got a GoPro, I'm going to hook it up behind me, and that's an excellent idea. Really.
It really is. Wow.
You can get that new GoPro Session for about $85 now. It's the really small one. I mean, it looks like a travel deodorant. I mean, it's little bitty.
Well, what I've started to use quite frequently is my main toy I use now out there is the Seek Thermal, which hooks up to a smartphone and shoots some thermal. And the beautiful thing about the Seeks is when you record video on them now, you actually get a thermal with sound as well. So you can actually narrate that, which is awesome. That's something a FLIR can't even do. So.
Mother's Day's passed, but there's always Christmas.
That's right, and guess what? If you buy it direct from Seek Thermal, their website, they give you free shipping, and you don't have to pay sales tax. And it comes with a 1-year warranty, and they're only, like I said, they're only $255.
And where is this at again? I'm sure everybody out there goes. Would you ever repeat the website again?
I'm not sure of the website exactly. I know it's not, but if you just Google Seek Thermal, the website should pop up for you.
Seek Thermal.
Yep.
S-E-E-K Thermal.
S-E-E-K Thermal. Yep.
Okay.
Very nice. They have
dangerous now.
You download the Seek Thermal app from the App Store. They have them available for the iPhone. They have them available for the Android. When you order it, you have an iPhone, you just say you want the iOS one. If you have an Apple, or rather if you have the Droid, you just order the Droid version. So,
okay, let me ask you something. Does it have to have signal to work?
No. Nope. Not at all. In fact,
that's a big plus.
I use it. Wow. I use it on I have my Seek Thermal app I have on all three of my devices. I carry a Note 5 for a phone. I have the app on that, but I tend to use my old Galaxy S4 for most of the work. But I also have a Galaxy tablet too, and that's really cool when you put the thermal on the tablet because you have such a big screen now to look at. So it's really, and it's just like it's just like your camera on your phone. Some of the functions, you just press the button, or you scroll it to record video. You press a button for a picture, press a button to record video. You have a full range of color palettes, just like any other thermal. You have ranges you can set. You can geotag it if you want to geotag it. It automatically comes with the system time and date, so it's never the wrong time or the wrong date, because it gets that off the phone. And even if you have a phone that's not connected to a phone service, it still picks up the date and time from the cell towers. So pretty cool stuff.
So I found the Seek Thermal on Amazon, and you can get it for the Android for $179 and for Apple for $300.
Because everybody's got an Apple. Sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry,
way to
folks.
go, Apple.
Way to go, Apple. Thank you, Steve Jobs. But yeah, they've come down in price. But I would always, Amazon, as long as it's from an Amazon certified seller, then your warranty is valid through Seek. You got to make sure it's through Amazon itself. Don't buy the cheapest one you find, because you won't get the warranty. Not that I've had mine now. Yep. Had mine for a year and a half. I haven't had. Yep.
Those were both through Amazon Prime. Both
Excellent.
prices.
So yeah, and even on the Seek website, it will tell you that there are, these sites we honor the warranty from these sites. Boom, 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 boom. So.
And these are also sold by Seek Thermal through Amazon, so it's direct.
Yep, there you go.
Oh. So, Steve,
I want to try it.
I'm going to.
The other thing, too, if you're looking for a great audio recorder, I cannot speak more highly than the H2 Zoom.
I've heard about those.
Great, and now they have an H1, but I love the H2. It takes a standard SD card, 2 AA batteries, and you're good to go. And it records in stereo. It can actually record 360 degrees, because it's got 4 mics in it. Great piece of technology. I've had mine for, I think, 5 years now, and it's still.
Does it do as good as a parabolic dish?
Well, let me say, it's not a parabolic microphone.
Okay.
It just records very high quality recording, and it records in stereo. So the kind of cool thing is, too, if you set your thing up you set the Zoom up on a tripod, because you can actually, it's got a tripod mount on. You can just set it up at the base of at the edge of your camp, put the windscreen on it so the wind doesn't get it, and let it go. And if a sound is coming from, if you know where your recorder's facing, you can tell which direction that sound came from by looking at the stereoscopic recording. It's kind of cool.
Wow. Wow. I've been using a bionic ear forever and recording off of that. The only problem with the bionic ear is if you use the dish, it's one directional.
Yep.
It only gets half of it. Anything behind it, it's not going to cut. And if you just set the bionic mic out there, it still tends to be directional, but not as bad.
And you get so much wind out of those, too.
Yes.
What I like about the Zoom is that if you want to, and you do get a little bit of amplification in your ear, you can actually put an earpiece in it or a pair of headphones in it, and you can listen to it live as it records. Wow. In fact, one of our researchers on our team, she uses her Zoom exactly in that fashion, and she'll hold it up to listen. So I suppose you could use it as a parabolic, although I don't think it's as sensitive. Like, it's not going to pick up something from a couple hundred yards away, like like little tiny footsteps. But as far as picking up some good clear sounds and hearing it clearly, yes, that will do an excellent job.
I want to tell you about the very first time I used a bionic ear. It was somebody else's before I owned one. And this was years and years and years ago. I was walking and I kept hearing breathing. I didn't realize that I was hearing myself. I was totally freaked out. I was standing in the dark, away from everybody else, and hearing this. And I did not have a clue that it was me I was hearing it. I said, "What are you breathing over there? It's followed me."
Everywhere I go.
Yeah, everywhere I go.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that is the one drawback when you put the cans on, the earphones. You know, you lose your sense of, you know, hearing per se. You know, directional. You hear something, you don't know. You know, I mean, with the bionic ear, you kind of can steer it, but it still picks up noise behind it. You know, and that's especially with the Zoom. That's why I don't tend to use that too often as far as, you know, squatching live. I don't throw that in there. Now, I will say this, I am a co-founder of a paranormal team because I do that too. I actually ghost hunt too.
Yes, I've done that myself. Yeah. And
the Zoom with the headphones when you are doing EVP sessions is phenomenal because you can hear the EVPs as they happen. You can actually hear it. And some of the I was just at, actually, you want to know how busy I was? I was at Rolling Hills 3 weeks ago, Rolling Hill Sanitarium out in western New York, and that's been on Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventurers. It's one of the premier haunted places in the United States. It used to be it was first built in 1724. It was a poorhouse. Then it was followed by a sanitarium. They had what's the lung disease there?
A tuberculosis.
Wow. Tuberculosis. It was a tuberculosis ward, and it was and then finally it was a nursing home in its last year. So, and there it was. I was in the furnace room, and I got a little girl, you know, saying the name Dan, just clear as anything. Nobody else heard it. I was the only one that was plugged in, and I'm like, you know, did somebody just say Dan? And then I hear two whispers, Dan, Dan. You know. Like, who's whispering Dan? Yeah, it was phenomenal. So it's really cool. And, you know, the Zoom, I cannot speak highly enough of it. And if mine ever stops working, I will have to go out and buy another one the next day.
Well, you know, I started out ghost hunting, but I found Bigfoot hunting a lot more lucrative. I mean, not lucrative, that's not the right word, more rewarding. I had much more action with the Bigfoot than I did with ghosts. You know, it was like hit and miss with ghosts, but if you had a good area, you almost always have some sort of activity that not always could be Bigfoot, but for the biggest part, I felt that it was. I have to ask you this question. If you're calling them a primate, is that what you think they are? Is an ape? You've been calling Bigfoot a primate.
That is correct, and humans are primates.
Oh, okay. So, okay.
See, I'm trying not to delve into. A lot of people get into this big argument. You know, number one, people, you know, it kind of irritates me when people say they're not an animal. Well, even we're an animal. We're a mammal.
Of course. Yeah.
And then we're a primate, and that's us. And
you're right. You're right.
When people get confused, is it part of is it a hominin, which is it comes off a strain of us, or is it a pongid, which comes off a strain of ape, or perhaps it's something even unique to both? We really don't know.
No, we don't.
So I keep it very generic. It's a primate.
Yeah.
And it would have to be a primate. But you see, here's the thing, and this was the premise of my second book, is that all primates, be it pongid or hominid, have a lot of similar characteristics, have a lot of similar traits. We even actually live the same ways almost, just differently, if that makes any sense. We both have, we all have our home ranges, and that's areas on a regular basis we travel. I go to work, I come back. I go to the store, I come back. That's my home range. And usually, you know, depending, it may be like a 20 or 30 mile range. We have vehicles, so our ranges can be a little bit bigger than others. But, excuse me, you know, and then we have what we call foci activity areas. And that's areas where we do things. You know, in human terms, they may be the malls, the schools, the grocery stores, the place of employment, and then finally we have territories, and that's our home, whether you rent, whether you're not, and primates are the same way. And what I've learned is that primates behave differently in these different areas. For example, how many times do people come across a Sasquatch and they just kind of look at you for a second and they just meander on off? Quite a bit, right? Roadside crossings. Yeah. Well, those are all behaviors we note in the home range. Because think about it. You're walking down the street, you pass another human being, you may say hello, but you just keep on walking. You really don't think much of it. Foci activities depend on what the activity is. I'll give you a good example. When we're looking at human speak, you go to the grocery store, it's pretty much the same behavior you have in the home range. You may see you will walk by them and you go about your business. But what if you walk into a school? A little bit different. If you don't belong in that school, a little bit different. So depending on the type of activity, you may get a different reaction. And that's standard across all primates, whether it be macaques, chimpanzees, gorillas, or humans. And then finally, you have your territory. Now think about all the aggressive Sasquatch sightings, people getting bluff charged, people getting escorted out of areas after being screamed at by some unseen thing. Well, think about how you feel if a stray dog walks into your house. You're gonna take action right away, right?
Immediately, right?
Right, exactly. So all these behaviors are all primate behaviors, very consistent across the board. Again, whether you're a macaque or a human. The thing that I always point out, and we have people that think that, they may be a hominin or they may, and I myself am leaning that they're more pondered than they are hominin, and I'll explain why. I could be wrong, and I'm not saying this is just an opinion. It's not based on any fact. I can base Sasquatch as a primate on three very simple facts. A primate has articulate hands and feet and has four things. Articulate hands and feet, a very large brain, and a small snout. And that's a primate, and that's us, and that's a Sasquatch. All the same type of genus. So if you think about it in that perspective, have we ever seen Sasquatch use fire? No. Have we ever seen
never heard of that.
Right. Have you ever seen a Sasquatch use a complicated tool? Nope, haven't seen that either. So for the folks that believe they're people that just want to stick to the natural being of the earth, we need to really understand evolution, understand how things progress. People never move backwards, they only move forward. Creatures, whether it be a chimpanzee, whether it be a human being, whether it be a dolphin, they move forward, not backward.
Do you think they understand the human language?
If they hear it enough, yes. I don't think they're born with that talent. I've had researchers say, I'm going to try using gorilla sound. Well, good luck with that, because what's the odds of a Sasquatch hearing a gorilla, understanding what a gorilla sounds like? They're from different continents, right? It's like me trying to lay a bunch of oranges down here in New York State to entice a Sasquatch. No, it's the wrong type of food source. Maybe apples, but not oranges, because they don't get citrus on it. You have to think logically sometimes. And for people that, number one, people who believe they are human per se, actual humans, well, they don't fit the description of a human being. They have no necks, conical shaped heads. They're covered in hair. They are dimorphically much larger than we are, to outside of the norms. So one would expect that if they were actually humans, they would be more of our size. Maybe they're a little bit hairier, but they would have our same body structure. So they obviously, DNA-wise, they cannot be a human. Now then, I've heard the hybrid theory, and if we're looking at the marvelous DNA study that was done, it's fraught with flaws, and it's fraught with contamination. And you know, I take the word of Dr. Brian Sykes, who actually did a very interesting chapter on his book about that particular DNA study. And he just goes down and explains to people ABC why it's wrong. And then if you talk to Dr. Meldrum or Kathy Moskowitz Strain, we'll all tell you that anthropologically that doesn't make sense either. So what are we left with? You know, we're left with a big question of what it is. And I, after seeing these things, am not under the impression that it's, you know, a human being or even or possibly not even a hominin, because truthfully, we are the biggest hominin. Neanderthal was smaller than us, so they were all smaller than us. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. However, the one thing I love to point out is that all things being equal, you just don't know. They could be something completely different. They could be in between pangolin and hominin, that some offshoot that we don't know about. And that's entirely a possibility of it as well. But I can tell you, it's a primate.
Okay,
what
so
do you think?
What do you say when somebody says, well, do you think it's an alien, and do you think it has special abilities like interdimensional, moving around, and I want to hear your view on this. It's probably been a while since I've heard your view on this, but go ahead.
Sure. Okay, well, first let's tackle the alien thing. Well, you know, there's been a lot of sightings of UFOs with Bigfoot, or Bigfoot's coming out of a UFO. Well, I remember this. You remember the 1970s? Okay.
I was young then, but I do remember it.
I was very young too. But you know what? Cows aren't aliens, are they? But there was a lot of cattle mutilations and reports of you, right? So how can, obviously, if there's an alien species that's studying creatures of this planet, why would they not? And I'm sure, this is where the confusion lies, is I'm sure that a Sasquatch probably has closer DNA to us than the chimpanzee. The chimpanzee, DNA-wise, is closer to us than any other creature. 96.4% DNA is the same in a chimpanzee than us. So a Sasquatch has got to be a little bit more, I believe.
Right.
But why would they not be interested in them and experiment with them and look at them as well? So, to me, Sasquatch
maybe
is no
they
more
couldn't find them either. I mean,
you never know. And when the aliens took pictures of them, they were blurry too. But so when people ask me that, it's that a Sasquatch is no more alien than a cow was in 1970. Now, as far as them having some supernatural ability to disappear, you know, and I said, Bigfoot just disappeared. I mean, where do you think it goes? It crosses the road and it disappears. Well, honey, you ever see a deer cross the road and jumps into the woods? How quick does that take to disappear?
Right.
The thing is, it has greater natural ability in the forests because it's camouflage, it's smart. If you know primates, you know primates think. They abstract things. They solve problems. They anticipate problems. So it's nothing supernatural about that. It's actually quite natural. And they're more adept to their environment than we are. They're adept to the environment like we were 300 years ago or 400 years ago when we were in the woods a lot more.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you.
You know, as far as, you know, portal jumping and shapeshifters and, you know, why solve a mystery? John Green once said, why solve a mystery with another mystery? You know, it makes no sense. And what it
I do have
shows to me that it's frustration. Yeah, it's frustration. People can't explain it, can't figure out. Well, I challenge anybody to go into the woods and catch a deer with their bare hands. And that's just a deer.
I had an
What do you think their
Go ahead, man.
What do you think their like sleep habits are? Do you think they find a structure and sleep in it, you know, almost like a human or a bear would?
Well,
or do you think they just
I think they
squat
take
under an old
advantage
elm tree or something?
I think they take advantage of natural structures. I've seen, kind of funny thing is, in 2000 I found this interesting structure where a big uprooted tree, and I mean the roots of the tree stood, the tree fell over, the roots of the tree stood probably a good 6-7 feet tall. And something had stacked sticks along the sides of that tree. And the ground underneath it was not, it's not a hunting blind, because nobody would have wanted to sit on rocks or anything like that, and it was very rocky. Funny thing is like 8 years later, or 7 years later, a very similar structure was found by another research team, probably on the other side of the area I was looking at, a good mile, I would say, almost. And they sent me this picture, and I go, and it was actually these sticks leaned up against this big boulder that was in place. And so I think they take advantage of natural stuff. People ask me if they ever go in caves. I don't think they would ever put themselves in a corner where they have no out. They may put them in a cave if the cave has multiple exits and entrances, but they'll never back themselves into a corner. You know, they're thinking. They're always abstract thinking. And Jane Goodall wrote when she was interning under Dr. George Schaller, they had put this banana in a pipe and a broomstick next to the pipe. Now, the chimpanzee couldn't reach in and grab the banana. He would have to figure it out and take the broomstick and push the banana out. And they watched this chimpanzee go in the room for 12 days with no help. And on the 13th day, they had just about given up, and the chimpanzee just walked in the room, grabbed the broomstick, and pushed the banana out. Meant that the chimpanzee was thinking about the problem outside of the room. So when he was back in his pen, he was sitting there trying to figure out in his own mind, picturing it in his own mind, how to get that banana out of the pipe, and he had figured it out. And he did it without having to see the banana, the pipe, or the broomstick. So
we're down to a minute 35 seconds. And,
wow, that flies.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great. So tell us real quick what you got going. What you got? Well, what you're planning on doing now?
Well,
actually, something about bringing your show back, and then.
Yeah, I'm hoping to have the show back by the end of the year, probably in the fall. Continue on with our mission. I got a lot of speaking engagements this year. I'll be, matter of fact, I have the mid-spring paranormal panel tomorrow, which I'll be talking about Bigfoot, and other people, I'll be talking about other things. And the big one will be Scarefest down in Lexington, Kentucky in September 29th through October 1st. I'll be down there doing 2 presentations over the weekend. Always a great time. There's quite a crowd there. As always, I'll be updating SquatchDetective.com as new information comes in, and new stories tend to break. So.
Okay, and what about your books? Can they all be found on Amazon?
They can all. My books, actually, the easiest way to find them is right on SquatchDetective.com.
Okay,
and you'll see the book titles right there. Just click on them. One is 50 Large, which was about the Georgia Bigfoot hoax, and the other one is What Would Sasquatch Do Using Primate Behavior to Validate the Bigfoot Mystery.
Wow, I wished I had asked you about that before we ran out of time. You did tell us some of it, though, and I appreciate you sharing. And you know what? Your You are an excellent interviewer, but you are even an excellent guest. And I want to thank you so much for coming on.
Well, it's been fun anytime.
Awesome.
Well, go ahead, Lauren, before we
I was
run out of
here. I was going to say it's been an awesome interview, and thank you again for coming on. And I'm so glad you could come on so quickly. That was amazing. And
absolutely.
We're definitely going to have you back in the fall for a part 2. Definitely.
Yes.
Okay. Deal.
Sounds awesome. I'm excited. I'm already ready for fall.
Yep. Okay, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. And
thank you for coming on.
Peeps.
Okay. Thank you for coming on. And everyone, will see you next week. Same time, same bath station, Monday night. See y'all next week. Everyone say good night.
Good night.